What's up, guys? I'm Hasan Piker. I'm here in Havana, Cuba, right now on a humanitarian aid mission.
It's a show of our solidarity with the people of Cuba and our opposition to what Trump is doing to try to strangle the Cuban people into submission.
It's hard to imagine anything more out of touch than influencers flying down some first class with their ring lights and their makeup to hang out in an impoverished country.
And my goal here today is to bring awareness to what my government, the United States of America, has done to the Cuban population, one of the most ridiculous embargoes of all time.
So last night, Cuba's electrical grid went basically offline, and one of the only places that still had electricity was the tourist five-star hotel that all of these Americans and Westerners are staying at while they can cosplay as being communist revolutionaries in Cuba.
So let me get this straight. Cuba, the entire country, is in the middle of its worst energy crisis in 67 years. The grid collapsed, no electricity, no food, limited medicine. And a group of American socialists, including a multimillionaire Twitch streamer and a daughter of a sitting congresswoman, fly down to Havana, stay in a five-star hotel with its own generator running while the rest of the island is blacked out. And they want to call this solidarity. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but let's talk about it. So we're gonna get right into this because we're gonna break this stuff down. We got the Hasan Piker streamer who loves to use shock collars on his dog.
Okay, it's the same reason as to why America, Kaya, please just just stop.
And he has a lot to say about this situation. He's going to tell you why he's there in Cuba, but also he's going to answer the question about the fact that he is in a five-star hotel with lights, with electricity, while the rest of the country is in the dark. And he's going to sit there and try to explain why this all makes sense.
That has only gotten more deadly as time has gone on. We have tremendous sanctions on oil transfers in this country. We're not allowing other countries to send in oil as well. It's a necessary resource. The hospitals are in a state of dire disrepair already due to the different components of sanctions. The hospital machines are broken and they can't be repaired because Cuba is considered a state sponsor of terrorism. And I wanted to basically showcase the personal lives of everyday Cubans and how this system, this rigorous sanctions system, dominates their lives in very meaningful ways, and yet we don't even know about it. Most Americans don't even know about it. And I would go so far as to say even a lot of Cubans don't know about it either.
I was saying tourism is the lifeline. Tourism is the lifeline for the Cuban economy as it stands currently. The government has very limited resources. I was saying tourism is the lifeline for the Cuban economy as it stands currently. The government has very limited resources, and the American government makes it illegal for Americans to stay wherever they want when they're in Cuba. They have to stay in what they've declared as five-star hotels, right? I'm telling you all this because, like, even the five-star hotels are not like, it's not like, it's what the American government has declared five-star hotels. But regardless, in comparison to the situation on the island, it's prosperity pretty much. And experiencing that dichotomy has like definitely fucked me up. Definitely. Like if I were to ever, not ever, but like I hope to come back. And when I do, I'll probably not abide by the American restrictions.
So let's break down what Hasan just said because there's a lot to unpack here. First, the hotel claim. He is telling his audience that the American government forces you to stay in five-star hotels when you go to Cuba. But that's not what the law says. The actual regulation, the Cuban Assets Control Regulations under FOAC, says you can't stay at properties owned by the Cuban government or the military. It doesn't say that you must stay at a hotel at $500 a night. Those are two very different things. They are privately owned guest houses, mid-range spots. Many options. It doesn't come with room service and having people wait on you hand and foot while the entire country around you has no power. So that explanation doesn't really hold up. But the second part is just absolutely wild. I wonder if you caught this. He says, quote, "I hope I come back, and when I do, I'll probably not abide by Americans' restrictions." That's a man on camera telling his audience that he plans to violate federal sanctions law. OFAC violations can carry civil penalties up to $365,000 per violation and criminal penalties up to $1 million in 20 years. And he's saying it like it's a flex. I don't know if it's just brave or just dumb. Either way, obviously the receipts are there on camera, but since he's a multimillionaire, maybe he could just fit the bill. Now, I want to be fair here. He does acknowledge the dichotomy. He admits that the hotel experience audience compared to the rest of the island is prosperity, pretty much, and he says it messes with him. Okay, I'll give him that. But acknowledging a problem while actively participating in it and then blaming someone else for your participation, that's not accountability. That is just your TED Talk from a penthouse. I mean, if he wants to be a true revolutionary, he should be with the people in the dark. If you're really trying to fight for the people, you should be with the people, not enjoying yourself, sitting there streaming for an audience while you collect money while the people could barely see what's going on around them. But real quick, before we continue on, if you like this type of content and you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button, like, share, hype, all those good things. Let's get back into it.
So we're on the plane now, getting ready to go to Havana, Cuba. We have this entire charter flight full of people, and as important, full of medicines. And we're so excited to be with the Cuban people and show our support, show our solidarity, and to say that this cruel, inhumane, barbaric policy of the Trump administration has to go. We're here in the Havana Jose Marti Airport. This is just one part of the donations that we brought. There's 6,500 pounds donations. The value is about $500,000. It's a drop in the bucket for what Cuba needs, but it's a show of our solidarity with the people of Cuba and our opposition to what Trump is doing to try to strangle the Cuban people into submission.
Think about the imagery and, in your mind, put these side by side of these people heading into Cuba on their air-conditioned buses and staying for a few days. And then think about what it looks like when a Cuban flees the country in a two-person raft trying to get to an America that is free.
It's hard to imagine anything more out of touch than influencers flying down some first class with their ring lights and their makeup to hang out in an impoverished country that is currently imprisoning, by the way, a reggaeton artist for writing a song, a protest song that went viral and was co-written with folks, Cuban Americans who are in America.
So CodePink brought 6,500 pounds of donations and medicine and supplies valued at $500,000. And look, if medical supplies actually got to the Cuban people who need them, I'm not going to knock that. People are suffering. Help is help. But listen to the framing. Everything, and I mean everything, is aimed at what Trump is doing. Cruel, inhumane, barbaric. Those are the words that she's using, not a single word about the Cuban government. Not one mention of the regime that has been mismanaging the economy for decades. Not a word about the political prisoners, not a word about censorship, not a word about the fact that this trip was organized with the help of Raúl Castro's daughter, and one of the distributing organizations has been flagged by the CIA as a front for Cuban intelligence. You flew on a charter coordinated by the regime. You meet with the Cuban government. You stayed in a hotel with its own power supply while the people you claim solidarity with sat in the dark. And your only message is America is bad? I don't see how that's solidarity. That sounds like a propaganda tour with a humanitarian gift bag.
So a bunch of socialist influencers, including Hasan Piker, the little trust fund baby, are headed to Cuba as part of this so-called humanitarian convoy. Before you look at the videos and see the trip flooding all over your feed, there's something people need to understand. Because they're making this about aid, but in reality, it's about narrative. At the same time, knowing that Cuba is a controlled state. Because this is not a country to just show up and film things with cameras and do whatever the hell you want. Cuba is controlled. Political delegations don't just pop in. Trips like this require coordination from the government and agreements. Access is definitely curated, movements are managed, locations are approved. Some of these influencers like Hasan, they have millions of followers, right? These audiences are bigger than entire news networks. Millions of people watch them and their videos, and they'll walk away thinking that the only problem with Cuba are the sanctions or the US. Not that the dictatorship is a problem, not that the censorship is a problem. What weren't they allowed to film? What did they do while they were there? Did they meet the dissidents? Did they talk to the families of political prisoners? Did they interview independent journalists? Or did they only see what the government wanted them to see and show you what only the government, which is the regime, wants to show you?
So last night, Cuba's electrical grid went basically offline. And one of the only places that still had electricity was the tourist 5-star hotel that all of these Americans and Westerners are staying at while they can cosplay as being communist revolutionaries in Cuba. The entire other fucking rest of the country is blacked out, but there's like that one light on the hill, and that's the light that they're all staying at.
Absolutely right. This is the part that people need to sit with. Cuba is a controlled state. You don't just show up with cameras and do whatever you want. Access is based on what they want you to see. Locations are approved. The people you meet are pre-selected elected. So when Hasan's footage goes viral, understand that what you're seeing is what the Cuban government wants you to see. Did they meet anyone that's against the Cuban government? Did they sit down with the families of political prisoners? Did they interview a single independent journalist? Or did they only go where they were taken to film and what they were allowed to film? That's not journalism. That's not even activism. That is content tourism in a dictatorship. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, because most people are covering this story or focus on Hasan and CodePink, but I want to talk about Ilhan Omar's daughter. She told people that she was honored to be there and honored to make history. And obviously Ilhan Omar reposted it. But here's my question. It's a very simple one. You have enough passion to fly to Cuba and protest American policy. You have enough energy to join a delegation organized by a Castro family member. But where is the energy for the people in your mother's district? Because in Minnesota, your backyard, millions and millions of dollars were stolen through the Feeding Our Future fraud. Money that was supposed to help feed children. People, kids in your community, one of the largest pandemic fraud schemes in American history. And it happened right there in Minneapolis. People have been convicted. People have been taking plea deals. The DOJ has been prosecuting this for years. What was the response from your mother's circle? Silence, deflection.
Treasury Secretary Bessent called Minnesota ground zero for what may be the most egregious welfare scam in our nation's history to date. 85 of the 98 people who were charged by the Justice Department with this welfare scheme are Somali. And you know this. He actually issued new standards. He's going to make it make someone disclose if they receive public assistance when they try to wire money out of the country. And he's lowered the bar for suspicious activity. What is the practical impact of doing that in the community?
It's just creating fear. What they are doing is creating confusion, chaos, trying to intimidate people.
CodePink says that their $500,000 in donations was a drop in the bucket for what Cuba needs. You know what else is a drop in the bucket? That $500,000 compared to the potential billions of dollars that were stolen from the children in your own district. Where's the convoy for them? Where's the chartered flight? Where's the t-shirt? If you're going to be about justice everywhere, not just for causes that get you likes from the right audience. I understand that she's a leftist activist and she wants to fight the power. But when you think about it, when billions of dollars are being stolen, taxpayer money that was supposed to be there to help feeding families, people with autism, people who need assistance. Isn't that bad? Isn't that something that we do not want to happen? A lot of people who like to cosplay being an activist, they don't really understand what it means. They like to stay in the echo chambers so they can get the likes and the views and praise while nothing really changes. Now look, I always want to keep it fair on this channel. The US embargo on Cuba has been in place since the 1960s. It's bipartisan. Obama loosened things, Trump tightened things, Biden adjusted. Then Trump tightened it again. And the oil blockade after Maduro capture has made things worse for everyday Cubans. Cuba hasn't received the oil shipments in over 3 months. That's real, and that is affecting real people. So are US sanctions contributing to the suffering? Yes, but so is a regime that has refused meaningful economic reform for 60 years. Both things are true. If you're going to call yourself a revolutionary, a real one challenges all the power structures that are hurting people, not just the American one. You don't fly to Havana, shake hands with a regime that's also responsible for the suffering, stay in their approved hotel, film their approved content, and then come back home to tell your followers you're fighting for the people. That's not revolution. You're just a government content creator. But let me know what you guys think about this story in the comments below. Thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.